In today's video, we're going to be talking about a commander deck brawl for this week's Tech Tuesday, Wolverine Best There Is. This is actually one of the new Marvel commanders that is going to be coming out in the Secret Lairs on November 4th, so while it's technically not possible to build this yet, it might be good to have a resource for when the Secret Lairs drop in just a couple weeks. So with that said, let's get into the video. Alright, buddy, thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate each and every one of you guys taking the time to watch these videos. Be sure to hit that like button if you do enjoy the video and subscribe. Click that bell icon if you want to be notified when new videos are posted. I am a day late with this, unfortunately, but I had a little bit of trouble trying to finalize the list, and it got to a point where I had like 96 cards and was like, I really can't decide how to finish this off. So, a little bit late, but I'd rather have a profile I'm pretty confident in versus something otherwise. And so yes, we are doing it for Wolverine Best There Is, and I do plan on doing some profile videos for other commanders from the Marvel Secret Lairs as well, but I have a lot of content coming up this week and next, so I don't know exactly when we'll get that out, but alas, I do think this will be a good starting point. As always, I encourage you to tweak and adjust the decks to your comfort level and what you find to work, but it's nice sometimes, I think, to have a baseline to work off of, and so this is kind of the objective here. Now, if you're not familiar with Wolverine, I will go over his effect briefly. He is 1 red-green, legendary creature, mutant, berserker hero. He has an ability that says double all damage Wolverine would deal. At the beginning of each end step, if Wolverine dealt damage to another creature this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on him. Then you can pay 1 and a green to regenerate him, and of course regenerate says the next time he will be destroyed this turn, instead remove him from any combat and heal all damage on him. This is a really cool card, of course, thematically accurate in terms of the regeneration and the lethal damage. Doubling damage is really something we can kind of play around with here pretty effectively, and it does work really well. People were asking why it wasn't double strike, and I'm going to explain why, because it does sort of work with a lot of the combo cards that allow green to deal damage based on a creature's power and toughness, what have you, whereas if they had double strike, that would not be an option. So it's kind of really important that we have that. It's definitely a Voltron commander, meaning that it's probably going to be a relatively small creature count, and you're going to want to focus mainly on getting your commander out, protecting him, and utilizing his abilities to deal damage. But let's talk about how we're going to do that. So we've got 17 creatures, and I'm going to go through them relatively quickly just because I don't want this to be too long. But we've got Attilan Jackal, which is a card from the Warhammer 40k. It is a really solid card with trample and haste, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can get a land, put it onto the battlefield tapped. Obviously, a bit of ramp is pretty good here, and it's a low-cost creature, so we can start ramping fast. Wolverine himself does not cost a lot to play, but he's obviously going to be removed at some point throughout the game in most situations, so being able to recast him is good, but also being able to cast him and then have mana left to cast some other spells to protect him or to utilize his abilities is really important too. Birds of Paradise, just a really good, mana dork. Cankerbloom, as well as Insidious Fungus. I think both of these are pretty good generic green cards, especially when I don't want to play, I don't want to play too few creatures. Both of these are easy enough to remove problematic artifacts or enchantments. In the case of Insidious Fungus, it can help with ramp as well. So they're just like decent enough options early game or late game if you need to get over some problematic cards. I just think they're nice to have access to, and they're not expensive in terms of the cost to play them, so it's sort of a win-win. Delighted Halfling, just another really good ramp mana dork here, and of course the spells can't be countered that you cast with it, which is nice. Duskshell Crawler, when it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and then any creature with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. We just want Wolverine to be able to get through, deal damage, and because of the double damage, it's, even more effective. So this is kind of, important. The trample is what's going to allow you to start dealing some significant commander damage pretty quickly. Elvish Mystic, Findhorn Elves, and Llanowar Elves here, all pretty standard mana dorks. Eternal Witness, I just think this is a good card in general to bring cards back. In some cases, if your commander dies and you have Eternal Witness, you can let it go to the grave and then add it back to avoid commander attacks and stuff. But also just to get back some combo pieces or things to buff, Wolverine up, which we'll talk about when we get to the instant section there. Goblin and Archomancer is pretty good, just reduces the cost of red or green spells. Grothama All Devouring is a card, I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. I saw a couple of other people suggesting it, and I think it's probably worth including in here. Other creatures have, whenever this creature attacks, you may have it fight Grothama All Devouring. And then when Grothama leaves the battlefield, each player draws cards equal to the amount of damage dealt to it by sources they control. So let's say your Wolverine is out, and let's say he's buffed up to be a 4/4. When he attacks, you can have it then fight Grothama. And if he has indestructible or can be protected in some capacity, he's going to deal more than just the 4 damage because of his damage doubling. So you deal 8, then Grothama dies, you draw 8 cards. Obviously, the stronger Wolverine is, the more damage you can deal to Grothama, the more cards you can draw. But it's solid, and it's, you know, it's just in general a cute combo piece. I haven't had a chance to obviously really like play test this extensively yet, so some of this is just on paper. I could see a scenario where this card is probably something I would look to cut, but it's also, you know, it's got a good bit going for it, so it's definitely interesting. Kedis, Emberclaw Familiar, another really good card. Whenever a commander you control deals combat damage to an opponent, it deals that much damage to each other opponent. Don't forget Wolverine deals double damage here, so we're able to hit all the opponents for a lot. Just pretty significant, and because it's all damage being dealt by a commander, you know, you can wrap a lot of pressure on the board pretty quick. Kodama of the West Tree, pretty good modified creature you control of trample, and then obviously you search for basic land if a modified creature deals combat damage. Again, giving trample to Wolverine is the best way to ensure he gets through, and getting some lands for it is nice. Lizard Blades is also a pretty good card here, gives the equipped creature double strike. So double strike would mean, in his case, you're dealing double damage twice. So if he's a 4/4 and he attacks with double strike, he's going to deal 8 and then 8, which is pretty damn good. So obviously one of the stronger cards here for creatures. And then we've got Neith of the Dire Hunt, which whenever one or more creatures you control fight or become blocked, draw a card. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 and then either a red or a green. If you do, double target creature's power until end of turn. It must be blocked this combat if able. So you can pay 3 essentially to make Wolverine double power, but then he also has to be blocked, and if he's buffed up with other stuff or trample, you know, he obviously gets a lot of benefits from that. And, you know, with the damage he's dealing, especially if he's got double strike or first strike or whatever, you're able to really maximize the amount of damage that you're doing. And then Toski, just a decent green card that gives you some draw power, and, you know, earlier-ish in the game, it can be a nice way to get some acceleration. So, alright, so moving on to the sorceries here, we've got Beastie Beatdown, pretty good card. Choose target creature you control and target creature your opponent controls. Then it also has Delirium. If there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard, put 2 +++ encounters on your creature. Then it deals damage equal to its power, so we can buff Wolverine up and then deal damage, and of course it's going to deal twice. So even just playing this early, if you have enough to make Delirium live, it's going to buff Wolverine to 4, and then you're going to deal 8 damage to a creature. That's just strong. And obviously there's a lot of spells in the deck that we're going to play that do this fight mechanic, because that's kind of the entire objective. But we're basically maximizing the value we get out of those cards, which is the important component. Blasphemous Act, just good board removal. I like Gamble. I know some people don't. I think it's decent to be able to search what you need. More often than not, as long as you have a decent amount of cards in hand, the odds of discarding what you draw are relatively low. And red doesn't have a ton of tutors, so for me, I think it's decent. It's one of the few things that can get you an actual card that you need. Hard-hitting question, really good. It is a sorcery, which can be a bit, you know, annoying in terms of when you can use it, but 1 mana to deal damage equal to power to target creature or planeswalker is definitely nice. Same deal here with Horrific Assault. It's just because of how cheap they are, 1 mana to cast. It's just basically good removal, especially with Wolverine. Kodama's Reach, Nature's Lore, Rampant Growth, 3 visits, all ramp, all pretty self-explanatory. You can pick and choose. I thought Flare of Cultivation is pretty good too, but we're playing so few creatures that it just doesn't seem like we're ever really going to get the maximum effect off of it. So at this point, I think what we have here is fine. Pick your poison. This admittedly was a bit of a last minute throw in, because I really just could not figure out what to put in for the last couple spots, but it does force opponents to sack an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. It can be a nice way to clear some problematic stuff off the board. You could obviously replace this with whatever else you would like. Rishkar's Expertise is another really good card here. It costs 6, but you draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So if you buff Wolverine up throughout the game and he's got a bunch of counters or buffs from spells, you can get some good stuff. And then cast a spell mana value 5 or less without paying its mana cost. Obviously, a lot of your spells are low cost, so this isn't always as impactful, but it's still a decent option. You could also play something like Harmonize if you just wanted extra draw power and ways to get things in your hand. I don't know, I felt like this card was actually pretty good for the deck, just depending on the timing in which you use it. Now, moving on to the instance, we've got Ancient Animus. This is a fight. Put a ++ encounter on a creature. If it's legendary, then it fights target creature. We've also got a bunch of other cards like Infectious Bite, Ram Through, and Titanic Brawl that all kind of do the same thing. So we're just playing stuff that allows us to buff our creatures and make them fight. Beast Within is good for removal. Berserk, creature gets +X/+0 and trample, where X is its power, and then it's destroyed if it attacked that turn. This is extremely good. Obviously, it's also in the secret lair for Wolverine, so if you are buying the secret lair, you're going to have access to this card already, despite its pretty high price point. It works extremely well with the commander, obviously, because he can regenerate himself, so the destruction is not that big of a downside. It's essentially doubling its power and giving it trample, and because Wolverine's dealing double damage, it's actually taking effect twice. Betrayal of the Vault is target creature deals damage equal to its power to each of 2 other target creatures. I saw this in a few people's builds. I have to be completely honest with you. I don't love it here. I've included it for now because I didn't really know what to replace it with, but 6 mana to do that when you can do it with 2 individual spells, really, for like 4 mana seems kind of steep. But I guess, you know, in a pinch it can work. And it's not fighting, so it's able to bypass, you know, Wolverine himself taking any damage, but I think there's definitely some other options that might be a little better. Brute Force, just a 1-drop, gives it +3/+3. Don't forget we're basically getting doubling here, so that's pretty good. Heroic Intervention is good for removal. Invigorate is a card I like a lot. If you have a forest, you can have your opponent gain 3 life to play this instead, so you don't have to pay the mana. You give him 3 life, and then your creature gets +4/+4, and he's dealing double damage, so you're easily going to make that back. I really like this card in here. Mutant's Prey, another one, just if a creature has a +1/+1 counter, it fights a target creature an opponent controls. Probably the best value in terms of mana investment, but, you know. Overprotect, target creature you control gets +3/+3 and gains trample, hexproof, and indestructible till end of turn. Not a bad card. Psychotic Fury, target multicolored creature gains double strike until end of turn, draw a card. Rabid Gnaw, this is an interesting one that actually is from Bloomburrow that's red, that does similar to what green does. Gives +1/+0, then deal damage. So again, you can kind of see the objective here. We're really trying to utilize Wolverine's ability to keep stuff off the board, but also buff him up. And Return of the Wild Speaker is really good. You draw cards equal to the greatest power among non-humans or non-humans you control get +3/+3. Wolverine is not a human. He is a mutant, so he does get that. And if he's strong, you draw, and then if not, you can also buff him up. So it's a multi-option tool. Tamiyo Safekeeping, just solid, hexproof, indestructible. Obviously, he's going to be something that people are going to want to destroy. Unleash Fury can be devastating if you combo with another card that buffs stuff up, and he has trample. Same with Vines of Vastwood here. It gets basically hexproof for the turn, and then if you kick it, it gets +4/+4. Just a really, really good card. And Worldly Tutor, just a search. I have to be honest, I know that it's probably a bit redundant because your creature count is low, but there are a few things that it's good to search out, and in Commander, consistency is solid across the board, so it's really not bad to have. Artifacts are all pretty standard stuff here. Signet, Talisman, a couple pairs of boots. No Lightning Greaves because it gives it Shroud, and then we can't target it either. Commander's Plate's awesome with the Commander. Mana Vault's just really good for ramp. Shadow Spear is another really good utility. Obviously Soul Ring, and then Brotherhood Regalia makes it an assassin and makes it unblockable. So that's basically insane. They're not going, your opponent's either going to try to remove this as soon as possible, because if Wolverine's getting through unblocked, the game's going to end very, very quickly if you buff him up even the slightest bit. And then for the enchantments, Alpha Authority gives creature hexproof and can't be blocked by more than one creature, which is really good if he's got trample. Same with Audacity. Demonic Ruckus, another really good card. Give us some extra resources while also buffing our creature up. Demonic Ruckus, funnily enough, with Alpha Authority, if he has Menace and he can't be blocked by more than one creature, it means he can't be blocked. So there is a fun combo there. Innkeeper's Talent, Rhythm of the Wild, Wild Growth, and Wilderness Reclamation. I like Reclamation in here because you have so many instants that you want to be able to play during the opponent's turn. So if everything untaps, all your instants then become live. Surely there are other options, but I do think this is pretty good. And then land-wise, I've got all the fetches here. Command Beacon, because it's nice to be able to get Wolverine back without having to worry about paying the command tax. Everything else here is either just fetches or, lands, with the exception of Rogue's Passage, which of course is nice for making it so he can't be blocked, and then Kessig Wolf Run gives him trample. Overall, it's a really, really straightforward deck to play, but I think it's got a lot going for it in terms of Wolverine's applications. That double damage is really strong, and the regeneration is nice too. So if you guys like this deck, let me know. I'm going to put a link in the description to the actual deck list. I know I went a little quickly through this, but the videos do end up being pretty long, and I know people aren't going to sit there and watch everything, so I try to cover the important points for people who want to see it, and also provide a resource for it. So let me know what other commanders you guys want to see in future Tech Tuesday videos, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace.